Welcome to the Gen Z Show. I'm your host, James McLamb. Today we're going to talk about a topic that this time of the year, towards the end of the year, for many high school students is of utmost importance, and that is college recruiting, college athletic recruiting. Today's guest, Heather Henson, is a former longtime women's soccer coach in college, 28 years in fact, but now she's left that field to be a recruiting educator, helping families and young athletes navigate this ever complex, changing world of college recruiting, helping them find their purpose, what their passion is, and the school that they really want to go to, and providing them with the skills and techniques they need. This is a complicated area, and she's providing some great insight. If you or someone you know has any ambitions or goals of being a college athlete, you really need to listen to this episode. Send this episode to your friends because this is going to be something you're really going to like. What a wonderful lady that she is, and a wonderful interview with Miss Heather Henson. Heather, welcome to our show. Thank you for being our guest.
James, I appreciate you having me.
And as a continual, often said statement, let's do a shout out to the friend that connected us, Tammy Matheny.
She is a great friend, a great mentor. She's part of the family for me.
People are beginning to wonder if this show is sponsored by Tammy Matheny, because I mentioned her almost every single episode as connecting me guests, but it's just a wonderful opportunity that she has of connecting people. So, well, our audience heard from me at the beginning a little bit about you, but they are always wanting to hear from our guest a little bit about themselves. So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about yourself with our audience.
Yeah. Originally, I'm from Dallas, Texas, and I had a great opportunity to earn an athletic scholarship to go to UNC Greensboro in North Carolina. So I was a collegiate athlete and got that bug and got into college coaching. I was one of the lucky ones that had the opportunity. And so just recently finished 28 years of NCAA head coaching at women's soccer, and have loved it. It's been a great experience. I've learned a lot, I think, of what to do and what not to do, and got a chance to really immerse myself into college athletics, but the real reason, and it helped me to find my why. What is that for? And it really targeted the student athletes, and wins were a part of it, as they have to be, right, within college athletics. But it was the relationship. And so upon leaving college athletics, I have started a business, and it is called H2 Athletic Advising. And it is truly set to help high schoolers, young people. It could be transfers in college, but it's young people and their families navigate the college recruiting process. And so my daughter is now 17 years old, and she always tells me, "Mom, I was your first client." And so right the moment she knew she wanted to play college sports, she told me she was my first client when we started this company. And so I get a chuckle out of that. And we're still going through that process with her, but she's been a great client. She's listened.
Does she pay well?
She doesn't pay, but listening to the advice is one of the best things I could have, and I have a really supportive husband who has been a part of college athletics most of his life. He played, he coached, and so it's great to have a family who truly understands the lifestyle of college coaching, and then also the giving back that this is now providing. Because now I get to go beyond women's soccer, and I get to go to all student athletes of all genders, all sports, and it's a really exciting time for us.
In the last 3 years, probably would be about the right framework. It may be a little bit longer, but definitely last 3 years, college athletics, the recruiting has changed dramatically. I mean, it has really been upended with court cases that have come about, and rulings and differing positioning of the way colleges can do stuff now. And I'm thinking, well, we're airing this in May, and for a lot of juniors, rising seniors, this is really their time frame. There may be a few seniors that are still finalizing their choices, but for juniors and stuff, this is getting to be the push and stuff on this. So in your 28 years, how have you seen it change? That's a huge question. I know that. When I said it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's a dumb question because that's so huge. But how is it a change? How is from when you started to now? What is that junior going through that's different?
Yeah, we don't have 28 years worth of time here. So yeah, I'll stick to that 3 to 5 period. At one point, the recruiting calendar back in the day was very narrowed, right? And then it opened up, and we were allowed to talk to high schoolers, right? Freshmen in high school. But like you said, in that time, that 3 to 5 period time, they've now kind of consolidated the time, and it's allowing freshmen and sophomores to be freshmen and sophomores in high school. But it has allowed the traditionally June 15th date for most sports at most of these levels. That becomes the impact date. If I get a phone call on June 15th or I get an email on June 15th or not, that decides who I am, right? And how good I'm going to be and what college I'm going to. So it puts a little more stress, right? As you said, it's that June 15th post their sophomore year. And so juniors right now have been almost a year into this cycle. And the great thing is all the sports are different in terms of, what sports recruit a little bit earlier into a junior year or a little bit later. And so those are the nuances of each sport. But you're right. The junior at this time, like my daughter, right? She hasn't made a decision, but she's visited school. She's been communicating with coaches. And it's the deeper part of building those relationships in this time frame to be prepared to make that decision. If they've already made it, still making that communication. And if they haven't made it, that communication is important to help them know, because that coach and those fellow teammates, that's your family for 4 years. Yeah. And that's the goal, 4 years, like that entire time,
Well, how realistic is that in this new environment for someone to stay at a school for 4 years, especially on D1?
Yeah. I still am, I think I'm a realist, and I understand, the optimistic side of, yes, we want 4 years, but we also know that anything can pull them away. But I still think that there's a big core of student athletes and core of sports that you can be at a school for 4 years, but you're right. I mean, I think there has been, you hear one and done, and that's going professional in some sports, or that's switching from one college to another because of the publicity, the exposure for future professional sports, or even the NIL that is causing some of these things. And that it has caused some of the traditional sports to now have a one and done year. And that's, that saddens my heart. But for me, it's about how do we help the young people, the majority. I think there's still a majority of them who want to find that school and be at it for 4 years.
So when folks think of college recruiting, I think they most often think of these elite athletes that are coming out of high school that are being grabbed, that are being being poured into and being catered to, going to camps this summer and that kind of stuff. But what you said there was the majority of them are not in that category at all. So as our audience is listening to us and as parents are listening to us, describe, who's the majority of the type of student that you work with? What would they be like?
The big picture of who I work with is the young lady or young man who, they want to go and play college, and they may not be getting all of this communication, right? The top 1% off each team or each sport are getting those June 15th phone calls and emails, and they're getting, right, it could be up to 20 to 50, right? They could be getting DMs from colleges and really all of that communication. And they're the ones who feel the most love, right? But they are, again, I believe there's a huge group of young people who want and love their sport and want to continue it. And they just don't know how to do it because they may not get a phone call, or they may only get one. And so then they begin to doubt themselves a little bit, or begin to go, well, it didn't come. I mean, I've been playing club sport all my life and my parents have invested all of this money. how do we do this? How do we get to my dream? My dream
Yeah.
of playing college sports. And so that's the group, right? It's the group who really wants to find it. And it's really set up to help empower them, really to help them find out who they are and help them understand what they need to do, and then help them take action. And I do it in a 3-part phase with how do they analyze who they are and what they want and their why, and then educating them not only on the recruiting timelines, but educating them on how do I communicate other than Snapchat, right? And Instagram and Twitter, right? And these young people don't use Twitter a whole lot anymore. But how do they communicate? How do they communicate by email versus different than a text? How do they communicate on the phone, face-to-face encounters? And then how do they sell themselves? They have social media. They can utilize that, but they have to understand the good and bad of that. And what does that mean, right? And how to really showcase and express their talents and their strengths. I truly believe God has given us our own individual strengths and talents and gifts. And this is an opportunity to kind of help that shine and help them understand that it's okay to help that shine. And I think that it leads them to ask the questions, to empowering them to ask the questions and use their mind and their voice to begin to take action and ownership of this recruiting process, to find that school that's the perfect fit. And my ultimate goal is I hope we get it down to 2 to 3 schools and they're all perfect for this young person. And then that decision it's not I have to go here. It's, oh my gosh, I have 3 great choices. Now I got to get into the deeper pieces of it, right? And that may end up being able to lead with their heart to make that decision because they've already walked through the analyzing part and the educational logical thought to find it.
When you talked about that analyzing, you talked about defining who they are. That just kind of struck a chord with me, and I want to kind of land back there. What is that? What are you doing there? What do you mean who they are? What does that mean? Because I'm thinking a parent is listening to that and saying, my kid knows who they are. They're a baseball player. It's got to be deeper than that. So
it is. And I use a story of one of my former players. She came in as a freshman, and she was going to be a really solid player for us, right? Probably not an impact starter right away, but she understood our culture. She understood our team, but she identified as a soccer player. Right. And so when she wasn't impacting on the field as much as she thought she was going to, because that's who she identified with, that led to really some struggles, right? Some mental struggles and then some performance struggles. And it was a process. And so I kind of took this approach. The great story with this young lady, Haley, is that in the end, she was one who was with us throughout our COVID time. So she had 5 years with us instead of 4. But in that time, it probably took until maybe the beginning of her 3rd year, her junior year. She realized who she was. She was grounded in who she was. And it wasn't just a women's soccer player. She was a child of God. She was a friend. She was a daughter. She was a sister. And she knew the value of each of those roles. And then the soccer became fun. And she became this free player and this person with just such vulnerability that she was allowed to show that. And she showed it and showed it and modeled it to the rest of our team. And so I used Haley and that journey that we took into this, right? And you're right, a 16 or 17-year-old, I mean, on any given day, they can be whoever they want to be, right? Are they in a good mood or bad mood? I'm a baseball player, I'm a wrestler. You're right. And so it's having, we break down into some questions, right? And some basic questions. What part of the country do you want to go? What level do you want to play? But what is the environment of the school? What size of the school, right? And so really those kind of surface levels, but then we dive into a little bit more of why do you do what you do? What did you want to be when you were younger? Why did you want to do that? What do you want to do now? And sometimes we have to ask the question, what do you know you don't want to do? Right? Because sometimes there's too many choices when you think, what do you want to do? And so we sometimes utilize the other side of that says, what do you not want to do? Right? And that helps us to narrow down that list, right? I'm not good in math. Okay, well, you know what? We're probably going to stay away from those majors in those areas, right? And then Having them realize that, kind of talking through, what does a teammate mean? What does it mean for me to see a great teammate? Am I a great teammate? What does that look like? What is team culture? And really diving into those deeper levels of that. Wait a second, there's more to me than just the element of I'm a sports player, right? I'm a soccer player, I'm a baseball player. And so really diving deeper into it. And we even ask the question, what does the different divisions mean to you, right? What does that mean? What is division? When you think of Division I, Division II, Division III, NAI, junior college, what is the image that comes to your mind, right? And then we walk through what their image and their perception is versus the true reality of it, you know?
Do you find that a lot of times they come in with one preconceived notion of what they think this process is going to be, and through this self-discovery, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so different than what I realized? I mean, how do you handle that?
Yeah, honestly, we have a free 30-minute consult before we get started. And I tell them I'm not a recruiting service, right? I'm not going to put your highlight film together. I'm not going to create your email and blast it out to 100 schools. I'm not going to do that. We're going to teach you and educate you and guide you on how to do this. And so there are people who would rather have somebody else do the work, and that's fine, you know, but we are not going to do that. We are going to say, we are going to be with you along this journey, and you can send us, right, the rough draft for your first email. Okay, Heather, how does this sound, right? And we'll walk through that journey and we'll give them guidance. And so you're right. So that hopefully clears a lot of it up on the front end, right? But as you said, you know, talking to a parent, they may understand all of that, but then talking to a 16 or a 17-year-old on that same conversation, then it's, wait a second. And I have had a couple clients like that. They've been super invested in terms of, yes, I want to find this place, but wait a second, I still have homework and I have exams and I have, you know, practice. And how do I fit it in, Heather? And I said, that's what a college student athlete has to do, right? You have to find time, and not just find time, make time to do this. Because as a college student athlete, you have time demands. You may not have to travel an hour to practice and an hour home, but that now 2-hour time is invested somewhere else. And how long does it take? Really, once you have your rough draft of your email, how long does it take to shoot off a couple emails a night? You know, and so it's just reminding them time management skills. So it's those life skills we're developing, and it helps them to realize, oh, I can do this. I can do a little bit at a time and still move forward each day.
What do you find when you're working with them is the thing that surprises young athletes the most, or even their parents the most during this process? When we were talking, when you were sharing, I was thinking, gosh, if I was a freshman right now, I would have visions of it just being all glory and easy and just, oh, sunshine and roses coming up. But I'm hearing now the work that goes into it that the majority have to do. You know, what surprises them? What are you encountering that you have to re-educate them on that you know, to help them along this process?
Yeah, the workload first and foremost. Right. And again, I tell them, I said, this work is worth it. You put in time into your craft on the field or on the court, and you love it, right? You're so willing to train 3 times a week because you love your sport, or up to 5 times because you're adding speed and agility and your sport specific trainers, right? And you love it. Well, let's invest that same time into finding your college sports team that you're going to be a part of and a family member. And I think the other part that is new for them is how to understand what the emails from colleges are saying, right? When you get an email that invites you to a camp and you get 15 of them, you feel really, really wanted, right? Like those coaches want me. How do I decide which 4 of those 15 camps I should go to? And then we sit down. So it's really deciphering, what is a college coach saying in their communication, in their emails to you?
Ooh, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought about, because some could just be that canned email response. Yeah, we'd love to have you come by and take a look. And you can see the writing that's not there, the hidden context of it.
Right, right. If you've been to a tournament, but and you know that they're on that list to have watched your game, but have never sent you an email except an invite to camp email, right? That's kind of some indicators. And so it's walking through that with them and being able to be I think the non-biased. I'm not their coach, right? I'm not their going to be coach in college, and so I can give a real non-biased opinion, but the experience of being a college coach that helps navigate what's really being said. And again, which still then allows them to say, well, is that school really interested in me? Well, here's some questions, right? And this is the communication piece. Here are some questions to ask that coach or these coaches. You have every right and you have the responsibility to yourself to ask these questions and get the answers before you just go to 5 camps, because these are the 5 top schools that are your dream school.
Mm. It seems like this process does create a lot of fear and anxiety in not only the athlete, but I would think the parents as well. So are you working just as much with a parent as you are the youth? Thinking that I had 2, high school athletes, and one was my middle child. My son was coming of age during the COVID time, so that just kind of really messed up everything for their processes, so much so that he was like, I'm through with all this. And a lot of the athletes in his generation, I think, suffered for that. But my daughter, she was an All-American swimmer in high school, and when she was getting to that age and colleges were starting to look, her first thing is that the school that I want to go to, that I know has the major I want, that I know is responsible for this, I don't know. No, not that I don't know. I do not want to live in that level of commitment, because she wanted to go to North Carolina State. And you're talking a top 5 swimming school in the nation. And she knew, if I'm going to even be competitive, it's going to take everything I've got on that. And so as a parent, we didn't know how to handle all that. So how are you helping parents with this kind of process?
Yeah, you are exactly right. It is educating the student athletes, but it is a must to educate the parents, right? The parents are on the call, and ideally we have them roughly once a month, but access to email communication is constant throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, the questions, because a lot of what is known or what is heard from parents through other parents and sport coaches, parents, you got to stay out of it. You got to let your daughter or your son take the lead on this. They want to know they're getting a strong, independent, freshman coming to college. And there's a piece
that has got to be a hard lesson for some parents to learn, especially in this world of snowplow parents that we live in that want to push out everything. You're telling them to stay out on what could be, to let this child do a lot of the decision making on their own. So,
well, they have. That's what a lot of colleges and a lot of sports teams are telling them, and they're components of that, right? So, for instance, I tell them putting the email together, right? The initial email that you want to send out. That's an example. Draft it, let your parents look at it, because here's I give them some strategies, some points that need to be in there, and then let their parents look over it and then send it to me. And I kind of jot some ideas and some other thoughts of what they may want to take out or put in, and then let their parents read that, right? And so that eventually the parents can just look over the emails and go, oh, okay. And at the same time, we're having those conversations of, here are some things that as parents, you can help support them, keep them focused on their North Star of remember that place we were landing upon. Where do they want to go? Like your daughter, mm-hmm. right? I don't want to play at a Power 5. I want to have a life and be a student athlete. And so keep them up focused on that North Star. And then then they got to hold them accountable, right? Because some of the fearful pieces are, okay, now I got to communicate with these coaches. Some young people, no problem in communicating. But some young people are scared to death to send a text or an email or a phone call, wow. right? Any of those levels. And so the parent has to hold them accountable. And I had this conversation with a parent and actually a family all together. And I said, let's make a deal out of this little village right here. Your parents have the right to ask you at the beginning of the week, what's your plan for communicating this week? And you're going to respond. And then at the end of the week, they have the ability and the right to say, hey, did you get these done? And if you didn't, then they have the ability to say, you know what, before you go out with your friends, you need to finish it. And I said, are we, and so I get to be that person, right? A parent later on said, thank you so much for doing that, because she'll listen to you because she won't listen to me. And I said, well, you're mom. I'm just somebody else's mom, right? And so helping them that. I think the other piece is when parents really, when it starts to get real serious and parents are going to have questions. And those parents need to be empowered to ask those college coaches those questions. My parents let me go from Texas to North Carolina to school. My mom had questions that needed to be answered before they said, Heather, that your coach is going to be awesome. He's going to take care of you. You're going to be supported. And so we need to empower the parents when that time is. And then, right, when it comes to finances, if it's athletic scholarship, if it's academic scholarship, if it's federal grants and aids, if it's university grants, that's when the parents, right, they're the ones who are going to pick up most of the time, they're the parents who are going to pick up the load on those questions. And you need to ask those questions because you want it to be a 4-year commitment or a duration of your eligibility. Right. And there are very important times, but yes, getting them to realize, hey, let's get her or him to step out of his comfort zone to do this work, right? And then, like, my daughter's taking AP tests right now, right? So guess what? I've cut her some slack on some of her stuff at the house to do and some of the college things to do because it's a busy time. But I've pushed her to do most of the work, and so I think we can lift each other up and encourage each other because our North Star is helping this young person find the college of their choice.
I really love that you're setting the parameters and the expectations of who is going to do what and who's going to hold you accountable. Because I can see in this process a parent taking over and just doing it all themselves because they want to make sure that little James gets into the right place and doesn't miss out on that opportunity and it's got to get all those things done. So I really appreciate that portion of it because I mean, we see that on the job market. I mean, it translates to the job market. My wife and I were sharing just this weekend about a mother whose son came home from college and she got him a job and got him interviews. And I was like, first off, tell me something about it. Is this because she didn't want him laying around all summer, or was she trying to get him, those right opportunities so he could have internships and that kind of stuff? And a little bit further questioning, we find out it's just because she didn't want the son to lay around all summer. I was like, well, I don't have a problem with that. But if it had been the other, hey, mom, can you give me a good job, because I want to intern stuff, then I would have had a problem.
Right. And it's educating the parents. I mean, I've had quite a few in the 28 years. I had quite a few parents call me as a college coach, and I would, answer their questions, be polite. But in the end of the conversation, I would go back and say, I would really love to hear from your daughter. And so I know you said she's busy right now. I get that, but being a college student athlete is a busy thing, and I just would love to hear from her. I think it's important for her and I to build that relationship to find out if this is the right place. So we have gotten those, and right, my work's not going to stop it, but hopefully it's helping redirect a few parents here and there to understand the deeper picture.
So from the other side, from your coaching side, when you were recruiting, what attributes of a student athlete? I'm not talking athletically. I'm talking about the other intangibles. What would you look for? That may be something right now somebody's looking for. Say, hey, does my little child have these? They got the skills maybe, but do they have those other things? So what would you look for?
Yeah. I will say take out athletics, as you said, altogether. I think a young person who is willing to step outside of their comfort zone. Right. And sometimes, like, I would get phone calls and I knew that this young lady was so uncomfortable, so nervous for this phone call. But I was so proud of the fact that she dialed the phone and said, can I speak with Coach Henson? Right. And so the willingness to be outside of her comfort zone, to grow, that growth mindset. Right. Because that translates in every facet of her being and who she is now and who she is willing to become. not just wanting, but willing to make it happen. And so that for me is an important piece. I think that someone who understands that they're more than just their sport, right? And we're not going to have everybody in that, but if they understand that, when I talk to them about what are your hobbies, what do you like to do other than soccer, right? That they understand and they cherish a bigger part of community than just their sport community. Because I think, again, for us, that would lead to what we wanted in our team culture as that family. And then how do we serve, that servant leadership mindset? And so those were important factors for me that I was looking for. And it's really the intangibles, right? Somebody who is willing to be vulnerable. And I think that goes along with that uncomfortableness, but just somebody who's willing to try something new and use their voice. A freshman coming in who, some people say freshmen don't say anything. I wanted freshmen to at least have a voice, and even if they didn't use it as often, but again, that courage and the faith to step forth and express their opinion. And so we would find those things out on the field. I watched a young lady years ago and went to recruit another young lady actually who had reached out to us. My eye diverted for multiple reasons, athletically for one, but also intangible. This team was losing by 3 goals. And this young lady who I identified, who luckily I was blessed enough to actually get her on our team, she was so encouraging of her teammates and just, right, she was a real skillful player, but her encouragement and lifting her team up and saying, we got it, keep going, great idea for that pass. Like, she was lifting her team up and almost willing the team to earn a goal and score a goal. And they did. They didn't end up winning, right? But I saw the momentum of her team shift into, oh, great, we're losing by 3, to, wait a second, we might have a chance. And so that person we can see on the field that has nothing to do, or has to do with soccer, but had everything to do with her who she was as a person and what she was willing to give to others and her servant leadership. And so those are some of the pieces that I would look for that were non-athletic that really came down to our student athletes.
I think it's so important for parents to know and understand that those things are just as important to the majority of athletes that are going to play college sports. I think it goes without saying that those things probably are overlooked if they're ranked top 5 in the nation, and their coaches are going to be going for that. Think, oh, we'll figure out how to make them work at here, and it not working is pretty common story that we could go back every year and say this top 5 kid blew out and all that kind of stuff there. But these types of character development traits are something that the majority of the athletes are going to have to be able to do this. So I hate to even ask this question because I don't want the parents to jump the gun too soon, because I'm like, okay, let the child live. But how early in their careers should this process start to happen? I hate to ask that because I don't want. I know we've pushed everything farther and farther back, and I feel like with the new NIL things and the way high schools are now thinking about doing NIL things, I feel like we're going to be recruiting in middle school or even younger. Hey, look, there's an 8-year-old that can hit the ball. Or look, you see that 4-year-old hit the ball off that tee. Let's set that kid up with a Capri Juice sponsorship, get them into our school or something. So I hate to even ask that, but how soon should they be thinking about this?
Yeah, from a college coaching perspective, when we got opportunities to watch freshmen play at tournaments, because tournaments are really high school based, right? So those 4 years, and so right, we would focus most of our attention on a junior class, sometimes depending on the cycle of a sophomore class. But if there was a free slot or time, we would shift over and we would watch freshmen and sophomores. And so I think it's important to know that. So that when they see them on the sideline and as a parent, oh my gosh, there's a college coach here and my daughter's only a freshman or my son's only a freshman, don't panic. It's not, we're not sitting and watching these games all day. These are like one-offs. We get to walk over, watch some of it, and then go to our next game, right? Because we have to get this next class coming in. And so but I think there's value. And I had this discussion with a father and his son who was a freshman in high school. And because of the timing and the track of his sport, it's a little more delayed. So he's a men's soccer player versus a women's soccer player, right? And so he's a little more delayed in terms of when they make those decisions. And so I said, start to get video, right? Your freshman year, start to get video. So you can create that first highlight reel, right? Start to, when you're going on vacation, start to drive past schools that might be of interest. If you're driving past some of those schools, and if they don't have a clue, you know, is there a big school, you know, 60,000 state school at near your house or on your way to vacation? And is there a little bit smaller school? Is there a 12,000? Is there a 5,000? Like, can you detour on your routes to just kind of get the lay of land, drive through a campus, you know, to help them, because they don't know what they don't know sometimes, right? They only know what's on TV. And so those are things that they can do in that freshman year, I really believe. They can start to just be aware of, you know what, I need to start to communicate better with my coaches, right? I need to be aware if I have social media. I need to start being aware of what I'm putting on it, right? And start the awareness piece with them. I think with the NCAA, you can go ahead and register with the NCAA eligibility center, right? And it's one thing that's off your list. And so there's some entry things that can be done. But I think it then starts to prepare more in your sophomore year because of that June 15th post your sophomore year contact date. Now, that's for coaches to reach out in all of Division II, all sports, and most of the Division I sports. There's differences: men's basketball, women's basketball, you know. But you can be an 8th grader and you can be communicating with college coaches. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. We're not watching 8th graders yet, you know? And so you can get comfortable in your freshman and early sophomore year, sending those emails and letting them know what tournaments you're going to be at, introducing yourself, but really starting to put that video footage together and get the entry pieces, you know, and finding out answers. You know, if that's, you want to do the work on your own and find out the answers to timelines and to things like that, or finding a group like myself, or recruiting. So I consider myself more of a recruiting educator, or there's recruiting services that we mentioned, right? Who will blast your stuff out, you know? So I think there's different levels, and it's you as a parent beginning to figure out what kind of help do we want, even though I may not know what I need to do.
I love that you call yourself a recruiting educator. That may be the tagline that we work with. I read that one down because I like that, because what you just said about, you know, services is probably what most folks think of, hiring this and they're going to do my highlight reel. And most of my interactions with them, I'm sure there's different personalities of these groups, but most of my interactions with them have been a little bit less. They're less personal. I think it's because the athletes that I had interactions with that had worked with them before were not these Power 5 athletes,
right? So
they didn't feel that there was a big a deal for them. It probably makes them look better to have a Power 5 athlete, you know, for their service going forward. So they give that more care, which is understandable. It's a business. So I do like the recruiting educator. So how does our audience get in touch? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I have a young lady that just recently committed to a school and talked with her mom. Right, I've known them for years. They live locally, and my daughter and her go to school together. But you know, they hired on with the recruiting service, and when we were talking, and they told me she committed and all of that. In the end, she goes, Heather, you provided such better guidance and support, right? Like that support of being there, and especially into the minute, like decision-making time, right? And visit time. And I said, thank you. I appreciate that, because I people can use both that service or educator. It's just, what do you want, right? And it's okay to not want my services. That's fine. You know, you're going to find what best fits for you. So, yeah.
So how can our audience gain that kind of support from you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah. So my website is h2athleticadvising.com. And we do free 30-minute consults, and you can click on there and book an appointment. You can look at the services that we provide, and honestly, these services are, I want to personalize what you need. It's based out of the 3 phases, but I want to personalize what you need and where you're at in the process, right? Are you a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior? Because those are different in where you're at. And then, right, my email address is heather@h2athleticadvising.com. And you can follow me on Facebook and Twitter. And then again, H2 Athletic Advising on Facebook. And on Twitter, it is H2 Athletic ADV. And then on Instagram, right now it is currently Heather_Henson, and shortly getting changed to H2 Athletic Advising.
And for the audience who's listening or watching right now, you can find all those links in the show notes. So if you are listening, just go to the podcast app, click on the information and scroll down. You'll find it. If you're watching, obviously on YouTube, just look down and hit more information, and it'll pop up there. Heather, thank you for spending your time with us today. This is a complex process that is really rapidly changing. So it is so vitally important to help young athletes, to help their parents navigate this, because what is current this year may not be what is current next year. And so they need recruiting educators to help guide them through that process. God bless the coaches in high school. They're the first line of questioning, and they're probably throwing their hands up and going, I don't know. I just got to prepare for the game this week. I mean, I don't know what's going on now. So God bless them for the work that they do as well. So thank you again for being our guest today.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much, James. I appreciate it.
And the audience, thank you for being here. Listen, someone that you know really needs to hear this message. So please like, share, and comment, and we'll see you again very soon on our show.